The studio lights felt impossibly bright as Mei Chun stood at the podium, her hands trembling slightly against the smooth surface. At 38 years old, she had cleaned enough offices to know that nothing ever stayed perfectly polished. There were always fingerprints, always smudges, always evidence that real people had passed through. But here, under these lights, everything gleamed with an artificial perfection that made her acutely aware of her worn sneakers and the calluses on her palms. "All right, May," Steve Harvey said, his voice warm and encouraging as he leaned against his podium with that familiar casual elegance that had made him a household name. His burgundy suit caught the light as he gestured toward her with the card in his hand. "We need 6 more points to win this thing. You ready?" May nodded, forcing herself to smile despite the butterflies performing acrobatics in her stomach. Her team, for other contestants she'd met only hours ago, stood behind her, their faces bright with hope and excitement. They didn't know that she'd almost called in sick tonight. They didn't know that she'd worked a double shift yesterday, scrubbing floors in a downtown office building until 3 in the morning before rushing to her citizenship class at 7. They didn't know that her daughter, Amy, had helped her practice potential game show answers while May quizzed her on vocabulary words, both of them studying for different tests, both of them chasing different dreams in the same small apartment. "Here we go," Steve said, reading from his card with that perfect blend of showmanship and genuine curiosity that made every question feel important. "We asked 100 people, what does the American dream mean to you?" The studio fell silent. Somewhere in the audience, someone coughed. May's mind went blank for a moment, not with panic, but with an overwhelming rush of memories. The cramped apartment in Taipei where she'd grown up, the night she'd decided to leave everything behind. The first time she'd seen the Statue of Liberty, not in person but on a postcard her cousin had sent, writing, "Come here. You can be anything." The weight of her daughter's hand in hers as they'd stepped off the plane at LAX 12 years ago, Amy only 6 years old, both of them carrying everything they owned in 2 battered suitcases. "Take your time," Steve said gently, and something in his voice told her he understood that this question meant more than points on a board. May took a breath. "The American dream," she began, her accent careful but clear, each word shaped by years of late-night English classes and conversations with Amy about pronunciation. "The American dream is not about having the biggest house or the most money. It is about having the freedom to become who you really are, and the opportunity to help your children become even more." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "In Taiwan, I was a teacher, but here I clean offices. Some people might think this is a sad story, but I do not. Every night when I clean those offices, I see the desks where people make important decisions. I see the computers where they create new things. I see the photographs on their desks of their families, their dreams. And I know that my daughter Amy, she studies at those same kind of desks now. She will sit in those offices one day, not to clean them, but to work there, to create there, to dream there." Steve Harvey's expression had shifted, his usual playful demeanor giving way to something deeper, more genuine. He was listening with his whole body, leaning forward slightly, and May could see his eyes beginning to shine. "The American dream," May continued, and now her own voice was thick with emotion, "is knowing that the work I do in the dark, when everyone else has gone home, it lights a path for my daughter to walk in the daylight. It is knowing that in America, there is no shame in any honest work and no limit to what tomorrow might bring. It is the promise that says, you can start with nothing and build something. You can arrive as a stranger and become family. You can be different and still belong." A single tear rolled down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. "That is the American dream. It is the dream that says my story is not finished yet, and my daughter's story is just beginning." The studio was absolutely silent. Steve Harvey stood motionless, and then May saw it, a tear sliding down his cheek, then another. The host who had interviewed thousands of contestants, who had heard countless answers and stories, was crying openly on national television. "Lord have mercy," Steve whispered, his voice breaking. He pulled out his handkerchief and dabbed at his eyes, shaking his head. "Lord have mercy." He looked up at the board, then back at May. Before we see if that answer's up there, I just want to say something. He walked over to May, abandoning his podium entirely, which never happened on the show. You know what? Forget the points for a second. Forget the game. What you just said, that's not just an answer, that's testimony. That's the truth about what this country is supposed to be. Steve's voice carried across the studio, addressing not just May, but everyone present. See, people talk about the American dream like it's about stuff. Houses, cars, all that. But you just reminded all of us what it really is. It's about dignity. It's about sacrifice. It's about loving your children enough to work in the dark so they can walk in the light. He paused, composing himself. Woman, you are the American dream. The audience erupted in applause, people rising to their feet. May covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. When she looked up, Steve was gesturing to the board. Let's see it, he said. Show me. The American dream is about freedom, opportunity, and the next generation. The board made its distinctive sound as the number one answer flipped to reveal May's response, paraphrased but capturing her meaning perfectly. 28 points. The game was won. But before May could even process the victory, before her teammates could rush forward to celebrate, something unusual began to happen. A producer emerged from backstage, whispering urgently to Steve. The host's eyebrows shot up, and he glanced at May with an expression she couldn't read, surprise mixed with something that looked almost like joy. Hold on, Steve said, raising his hands to quiet the celebrating contestants and audience. We got something happening here. May, I need you to stay right where you are. May's heart hammered. Had she said something wrong? Had she somehow violated the rules? But Steve was smiling, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Folks, we're going to do something we have never done in the history of this show, Steve announced. May, what I'm about to tell you, your teammates didn't know, the audience didn't know, and I didn't know until just this second. But apparently, while you were back there getting ready to play this game, something was happening backstage. Another figure emerged from the wings, a woman in professional attire carrying a folder. Then another person, and another. May recognized one of them, and her breath caught. It was Mr. Patterson, the caseworker who had been helping her with her citizenship application. May Chun, Steve said, his voice full of emotion again. Approximately 30 minutes ago, while you were in hair and makeup, a very important letter arrived for you. Mr. Patterson here brought it to the show because he knew you were going to be here tonight, and he thought you might want to know the results as soon as possible. May's knees felt weak. The citizenship test. She'd taken it 3 weeks ago, and the waiting had been agony. Every day she checked the mail, every day nothing but bills and advertisements. And now, here, in front of all these people, Mr. Patterson, Steve said, gesturing for the caseworker to speak. The older man stepped forward, smiling warmly at May. Ms. Chun, it is my privilege to inform you that your application for United States citizenship has been approved. Congratulations. The studio erupted again, but the sound seemed to come from very far away. May stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the words. Approved. Citizen. American. The dreams she'd carried across an ocean, the sacrifices she'd made, the nights she'd worked until her back ached and her eyes burned. It had all led to this moment. But Steve wasn't finished. Now, May, I know you were supposed to go to a federal building in a few weeks for your citizenship ceremony. Boring place, fluorescent lights, probably looks like the DMV, am I right? People laughed, and May nodded numbly. Well, see, here's the thing, Steve continued, and now his grin was enormous. We made some calls, very fast calls, and it turns out, he gestured toward the wings again, and a distinguished-looking woman in judicial robes walked onto the stage. This is the Honorable Judge Margaret Richardson, Steve announced. And if you're willing, May, she's prepared to administer your oath of citizenship right here, right now, on national television. May's hands flew to her mouth. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, to women who scrubbed floors and counted pennies and studied citizenship materials by the light of their phone while riding the night bus home from work. But wait, Steve said, holding up one finger. There's one more thing. May, when you filled out your paperwork, You listed family members you'd want present for your ceremony. And we thought, well, if we're going to do this, we should do it right. The audience began to murmur, sensing something more was coming. Steve pointed to the audience entrance. Mei Chun, please welcome your family. The doors opened, and Mei saw her daughter first. Amy, 17 years old, beautiful and brilliant, wearing the dress they'd bought together for her senior year photos. She was crying, running toward the stage. Behind her came Mei's sister, who had helped sponsor their immigration, who had let them sleep on her couch for the first 6 months. Then her brother-in-law, her 2 nephews, her study group from citizenship class, and Mei's breath stopped entirely. Her mother. Her mother, who she hadn't seen in person in 12 years because visits to Taiwan were too expensive and time was too scarce. Her mother, who had raised her to believe in education and dignity and hard work. Her mother, who had told her it was okay to leave, to seek a better life, even though it broke both their hearts. Mama, Mei whispered, and then Amy was on stage, throwing her arms around her mother, both of them crying. The rest of her family followed, surrounding her in warmth and love and the kind of joy that transcends language. Steve Harvey stood back, wiping his eyes again, letting the moment unfold. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. I think we're ready now. Judge Richardson stepped forward, her expression solemn but kind. She held a small flag in one hand and an official document in the other. The studio quieted, the weight of the moment settling over everyone present. Please raise your right hand, the judge said. Mei did, her hand trembling, her daughter holding her other hand tightly. Her mother stood just behind her, one hand on Mei's shoulder, and she could feel the whole family surrounding her, supporting her, witnessing this moment that belonged to all of them. I hereby declare, on oath, the judge began, and Mei repeated the words that would change everything and nothing, because she had always carried America in her heart, had always believed in its promise, had always lived its values even when the paperwork said she was still a visitor. That I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen. The words rolled over her, ancient and powerful, a promise and a commitment. Mei spoke clearly, her accent still present, but her conviction absolute. That I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. She thought of the nights she'd studied that Constitution, puzzling over phrases and principles that were sometimes hard to translate, but always rang true. Freedom of speech, equal protection, the pursuit of happiness. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Her daughter squeezed her hand. Her mother's hand pressed more firmly on her shoulder. And that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Freely. Yes, she had chosen this. Not because Taiwan wasn't wonderful. It always would be her first home, the place of her childhood and her ancestors. But because America had become home too, in a different way. Home was where you built your life. Home was where your children grew. Home was where you became yourself. So help me God. So help me God. Mei repeated, and the words felt like a prayer, like a promise, like a bridge between who she had been and who she was becoming. Congratulations, Judge Richardson said, smiling now. You are now a citizen of the United States of America. The studio exploded with applause, cheers, whistles. Steve Harvey was crying again. The audience was on their feet, and Mei was surrounded by her family, all of them laughing and crying at once. Judge Richardson handed her the small American flag, and Mei held it carefully, reverently, thinking of all the people who had carried this flag before her, some born to it, some who had chosen it, all of them part of the same complicated, beautiful, ongoing story. Speech. Speech, someone in the audience called out, and others took up the chant. Steve laughed, wiping his eyes. You want to say something, Mei? Mei nodded, stepping forward with Amy still holding her hand. She looked out at the audience, at the cameras, at all the people who had witnessed this moment, and felt the weight of it, The responsibility of representing all the other immigrants who cleaned offices, drove taxis, worked in kitchens, struggled with language and paperwork and loneliness, all of them chasing the same dream. Thank you, she began, her voice small but growing stronger. Thank you to Judge Richardson, to Steve Harvey, to everyone here. Thank you to my family, especially my daughter Amy and my mother who came so far to be here. Thank you to America for keeping its promise. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I want to say something to all the people watching who are like me. The people who work hard in jobs that maybe nobody notices. The people who are still studying, still trying, still hoping. I want to tell you, your work matters. Your sacrifice matters. You matter. Amy was crying again, proud tears this time. May squeezed her hand. In Taiwan, we have a saying, one generation plants the trees, another gets the shade. I plant trees at night when I clean those offices. My daughter will have shade because of those trees. But here is the beautiful thing about America. In this country, maybe I will also get to rest in that shade someday. Maybe there is time for my story to have a new chapter too. Maybe the American dream is big enough for all of us, for all our chapters, for all our generations. She looked at Steve Harvey. Earlier, I said the American dream is about freedom and opportunity in the next generation. But standing here now, I think it is also about community. It is about all of us, different people from different places, choosing to be family together, choosing to support each other, to celebrate each other, to believe in each other. Steve nodded vigorously, pointing at her. That's it right there. That's it. So thank you, May concluded. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for making room for my family in the American family. I promise to honor this gift. I promise to work hard, to contribute, to help others the way I have been helped. I promise to be a good citizen, not just on paper, but in my heart and in my actions every single day. The applause was deafening. May's mother pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering in Mandarin, I am so proud of you. Your father would be so proud. Steve Harvey waited for the noise to die down, then spoke into his microphone. You know, we've been doing Family Feud for a long time. We've given away cars, we've given away money, we've had some incredible moments on this stage. But I can honestly say this is the most important thing that's ever happened on this show. This right here, this is what it's all about. He looked directly into the camera. Y'all just witnessed history. You just saw what America looks like when it lives up to its best self. This woman works night shifts cleaning offices so her daughter can go to college. She studies for citizenship tests after 12-hour days. She learns a new language, adapts to a new culture, and never complains, never quits, never loses faith in the dream. Steve's voice grew passionate. And you know what? There are millions of people like May in this country. People working hard, sacrificing, believing in tomorrow. They're not asking for handouts. They're not looking for shortcuts. They're just asking for a chance to work, a chance to contribute, a chance to become part of the family. And when we give them that chance, look what happens. Look at the dignity. Look at the gratitude. Look at the love. He turned back to May. You said earlier that you clean offices in the dark so your daughter can walk in the light. But you know what I see? I see a woman who's been walking in the light all along. You're the light, May. You and people like you. You're what makes this country bright. The show's producers were signaling frantically. They had run over time. The schedule was in chaos, but nobody cared. This was bigger than a game show. This was a moment that would be replayed, shared, discussed. This was television that mattered. Amy stepped forward, taking the microphone Steve offered. Can I say something? Of course, sweetheart, Steve said. I just want everyone to know that my mom is the strongest person I've ever met. Amy said, her voice clear despite her tears. She left everything she knew to give me a better life. She works all night and still helps me with my homework. She never went to her own high school graduation because she had to work, but she's never missed one of my school events. She teaches me Chinese so I won't forget where we came from, and she learns English so we can move forward together. Amy looked at her mother. Mom, you always say you're just a cleaning lady, but you're not just anything. You're my hero. You're the reason I'm going to UCLA next year on a full scholarship. You're the reason I believe I can do anything. And now you're an American citizen, which means this country is lucky to have you. Just like I'm lucky to be your daughter. May pulled Amy close, both of them crying, and the audience's applause seemed to shake the studio. Steve Harvey stepped back, letting the moment belong to them, understanding instinctively that sometimes the best thing a host can do is get out of the way and let life unfold. Judge Richardson approached them again, this time less formally. Ms. Chun, or should I say, Citizen Chun, I want you to know that I volunteered to do this. When the producers called looking for a federal judge who could administer the oath on short notice, several of us raised our hands. But I particularly wanted to be here because my own grandmother immigrated from Italy in 1920. She worked in a factory, barely spoke English, saved every penny. She never became wealthy, never became famous, but she made it possible for her children to go to college, and her grandchildren to become doctors and lawyers, and, yes, even judges. The judge's eyes were bright, with unshed tears. When I put on these robes, I wear them for her. For all the immigrants who built this country with their hands and their dreams. So it is my honor, truly my honor, to welcome you to citizenship. Your story is part of our story now, officially and forever. She shook May's hand, then Amy's, then embraced them both. The formality of her position melted away in the face of shared humanity, shared history, shared hope. Steve stepped forward again. Before we close this out, I want to make one more announcement. May, you won the game tonight, which means you're taking home prize money. But the folks here at Family Feud, the producers, the network, we all got together and decided that wasn't enough. So we're also giving you a $50,000 scholarship fund for Amy's education at UCLA. Amy gasped, her hands flying to her face. May staggered slightly, her sister catching her arm to steady her. And, Steve continued, we're establishing the May Chun Citizenship Scholarship, a fund that will help other immigrants studying for their citizenship tests. Because your story shouldn't be unique. Your courage shouldn't be rare. We want to help more people walk the path you've walked. May couldn't speak. She could only stand there, surrounded by her family, holding her American flag, feeling the weight of gratitude and joy and disbelief all at once. 12 years ago, she had stepped off a plane with 2 suitcases and a 6-year-old daughter. She had been terrified and hopeful in equal measure. She had wondered if she'd made the right choice, if she could survive in this strange new country, if her daughter would forgive her for uprooting their lives. Now, standing on a television stage, a naturalized American citizen with her family around her and her daughter bound for college, she knew the answer. She had made the right choice. Not because it was easy, it had been incredibly hard. Not because she had achieved wealth or fame, she had neither. But because she had given Amy possibilities, because she had proved to herself that she could be brave, because she had found a new home without losing her old one. As the show finally wrapped, as the cameras stopped rolling and the audience began to file out, people kept approaching May. Some wanted autographs, which seemed absurd to her. She was just a cleaning lady. But they insisted. They told her their own immigration stories, or their parents' or grandparents' stories. They thanked her for reminding them what America could be. They took selfies with her, hugged her, blessed her. One elderly man, Korean by his appearance, held both her hands and spoke to her urgently in accented English. My father came here in 1952. He worked in a laundry for 40 years. Never complained. Never stopped believing. You are like him. You keep the dream alive for all of us. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, wearing a hijab, approached shyly. I'm studying for my citizenship test right now. I work at a hospital, night shift, cleaning like you. Today I was so tired, I almost quit. But now, she gestured at the stage, at May, at everything that had just happened. Now I remember why I'm doing this. Thank you. Steve Harvey watched these interactions from the side of the stage, and when he caught May's eye, he simply nodded, a gesture of respect and recognition. He understood, perhaps better than most, the power of representation, the importance of seeing yourself reflected in stories of success and belonging. Finally, when the studio had mostly cleared and it was just May's family and a few crew members packing up equipment, May's mother pulled her aside. They sat in the audience seats, just the two of them, mother and daughter, speaking in rapid Mandarin. I was wrong, her mother said quietly. When you told me you were leaving Taiwan, I was angry. I thought you were abandoning us, abandoning your culture. I thought you would forget who you were. Mama, let me finish. Her mother took her hand. But watching you tonight, hearing you speak about planting trees and walking in light, seeing the woman you've become and the daughter you've raised, I understand now. You didn't abandon anything. You carried it with you. You made it bigger. You became more, not less. May leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of the jasmine soap her mother had used for as long as she could remember. I miss home sometimes, Mama. I miss the food, the language, the way things make sense there. Some days I feel like I don't fully belong anywhere, not in Taiwan anymore, not quite in America yet. That feeling, her mother said softly, that is the immigrant heart. We live in between. But that's not weakness, daughter. That's strength. You have 2 homes now, 2 languages, 2 cultures. Amy will have even more. Each generation gets richer, not poorer. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and then her mother said, Your father would have been so proud tonight. He always said you were the brave one. I learned it from you, May said. You let me go? That was brave too. Amy found them there, sitting in the empty studio, and joined them, the 3 generations of women linked by love and sacrifice and hope. They sat together as the crew finished packing up, as the lights dimmed, as the magic of the evening settled into memory. On the way home, crammed into her sister's car with half the family, everyone talking at once in a mixture of Mandarin and English, May's phone began to buzz. Messages, notifications, alerts. The show's social media team had already posted clips of her answer about the American dream, of Steve Harvey crying, of her citizenship ceremony. The videos were going viral, thousands of shares, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Comments poured in from around the world. Other immigrants sharing their stories. Natural-born citizens expressing gratitude and recommitment to American ideals. People arguing about immigration policy, about the American dream, about what it means to belong. May's story had sparked conversation, debate, reflection. But May barely glanced at her phone. She was too busy laughing at her nephew's jokes, answering her mother's questions about Los Angeles, listening to Amy excitedly talk about her college plans. The viral moment would pass, the fame would fade, but this, her family, together, celebrating, this would last. Later that night, after everyone had finally gone to bed in her sister's house, where they'd all crammed in like old times, May stood alone in the kitchen. She made herself a cup of tea, the Taiwanese oolong her mother had brought as a gift, and sat at the table, still wearing the outfit she'd worn on Family Feud. She thought about the question Steve Harvey had asked. What does the American dream mean to you? She'd answered from her heart, and her answer had changed her life. But sitting there in the quiet darkness, she realized her answer was incomplete. The American dream wasn't just about freedom and opportunity in the next generation, though it was certainly those things. The American dream, she thought, was also about transformation. It was about the idea that you could arrive as one thing and become another without losing your essential self. It was about addition, not subtraction, adding new language without forgetting the old, new customs without abandoning the previous, new identity without erasing the original. It was about the promise that your worth wasn't determined by where you started, but by where you chose to go and how you chose to get there. It was about dignity in all work, hope in all circumstances, possibility in all tomorrows. And perhaps most importantly, the American dream was about family, not just biological family, though that mattered, but the larger family you chose and were chosen by. The family of fellow strivers, fellow dreamers, fellow believers in a better future. The family that welcomed you not despite your differences, but because of them. The family that said, bring your whole self, your history, your language, your customs, your food, your stories. Bring all of it. We're richer when you do. May pulled out the small American flag Judge Richardson had given her. She set it on the table next to her tea, these 2 symbols of her dual identity, one ancient and Eastern, one newer and Western, sitting together in perfect harmony, each making the other more meaningful. Tomorrow she would go back to work, back to the night shift, back to cleaning offices. She would scrub floors and empty trash cans and vacuum carpets. But she would do it as an American citizen now, and somehow that made even the humble work feel different, feel important, feel like part of a larger story. And someday, maybe not so far in the future, she would work different hours in better light. She was still studying, still learning, still growing. Her supervisor at the cleaning company had suggested she might want to train for a management position. Amy was helping her update her resume, explore options, dream bigger. The American dream, May realized, wasn't a destination you reached. It was a direction you traveled. It was the belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that effort mattered, that hope was rational, that love was stronger than fear. Outside the window, Los Angeles glowed with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a dream. Somewhere out there were other immigrants cleaning offices, driving cabs, working night shifts, studying in their spare time, hoping for their children, carrying their cultures and their hopes into the future. May raised her teacup to them, to all of them, her fellow dreamers. "We belong here," she whispered into the quiet kitchen. "We make this place what it is. Our work matters. Our stories matter. We matter." And in the morning, when Amy came downstairs for breakfast before school, she would find her mother asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting on her arms, an American flag in one hand and an acceptance letter to UCLA in the other, a slight smile on her peaceful face, dreaming citizen dreams in her first full night as an American.